I really want to talk about what put you on the path that you're on right now.
Like film wise or like life wise?
Both.
Okay. Film wise, I worked a summer camp in the Lord, I don't know what year it was. I graduated in 2020. I worked the camp probably my sophomore year, so probably around 2022 ish. And so I came to college, wanted to be a physical therapist, took Bio 1 during COVID, and hated my life and was like, nope, not doing that. So then I switched to psychology because me and myself, I have issues with mental health. And then I also had a friend commit suicide when we were in the 9th grade. That kind of altered my brain chemistry a lot. And so I was like, well, I've always liked mental health, and so let me become a psych major. And so I started as a psych major, absolutely loved it, picked a minor, and started doing my religious studies minor. And then I worked that summer camp in that around 2022, and they put me on stage cameras. And everybody hated it, and I adored it. Like, I loved it so much. And so whenever somebody wouldn't want to do a stage cam shift, like, I ended up taking it. And so, like, every night I was on stage cams. And so I ended up just like kind of figuring out that I really enjoyed it. Somebody like talked to me about like doing videography, and I was like, maybe I'll just take a film class and see if I like it. And so I took Intro to Film with Dr. Corson, loved it, and I was like, well, I can do a double minor. So I was a psych major, religious studies minor, and then film minor. And the more I got into the program, the more I was like, I really like this a lot. And I started getting on sets and was like, wow, I like really, really like this a lot. And so then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pull the trigger, I'm gonna drop my religious studies minor, and I'm just gonna be a psych major and a film major as well. So I'm a double major in psychology and film. And so I finished my film degree last semester, and so now I'm in my last 2 semesters of finishing up my film degree. And so that's kind of how I got onto the film realm. Life realm, Lord.
Right.
Yeah, I've had. My parents were really great. I'm an only child, and so my parents were really great. But I've actually got put in therapy at the age of 6 for generalized anxiety disorder. So I've been showing signs of anxiety since I was itty bitty. And so it's genetics. My family was not. I was not blessed with great genetics. Family's rough on both sides. My mom kind of had a neglectful mother, and my dad's parents grew up during the Depression. So that was something where it was like, I don't know, I love my dad a lot, but he put a lot of pressure on me. And so it was nature and nurture hit me with the 1-2 combo. And so I've always had just high functioning generalized anxiety disorder. And the older that I got, the worse it kind of got. And as most teenage girls, once around junior high hit, I developed anorexia nervosa. And so I was starving myself for all of junior high and into high school until my volleyball coach kind of got a hold of me and was like, you physically cannot maintain the road that you're going down. Like, we've got to figure out something. And so that kind of turned around a little bit, but it's one of those things that any therapist will tell you, once you have it, it never goes away. You just learn to manage it. And then my depression really started to kick up in 9th grade. That's whenever my friend that I had known since kindergarten took his own life. Was not expecting it at all. And that threw me. Like, I remember being at a volleyball tournament, and because I've played volleyball my entire life, and so I remember being at a volleyball tournament, and my parents took my phone away from me. And they were like, you need to focus on the game. I was like, why can't I have my phone? I just want to listen to music. They're like, you can listen to music on your dad's phone. And after we lost the game, because we were in tournament play, and so once we made it all the way into the finals, and so once we lost the championship, my parents pulled me to the side, and they were like, we don't want you to have your phone because, like, I'm not going to say the name, but so-and-so, like, killed himself this morning. And we didn't want you to figure out from social media. And I was like, oh. And I remember time just kind of stopping and then becoming really nauseous and, like, automatically just blaming myself for it. It was like, why didn't I see this? And so that's whenever I started to really think about, like, mental health a lot and, like, the mental health of other people. And so that's kind of the kickstart of where my depression started up. Then I started dating this guy. Heartbreak obviously does not help. And so my depression got real bad junior year. And so that was a pretty dark time. And then luckily I got in with a good group of friends that happened to be with my church. And so I got in with them, and they really helped me, showed me a lot of love, and kind of started pushing me to advocate for myself in terms of my own mental health. And so I tried my best to kind of start turning my life around, turning my mental health around. And then that whole church group ended up falling apart. I did an internship at the church, and the male youth pastor ended up closing his door and yelling at me in the corner, and blaming me because our entire church group was falling apart. We went from having 60 plus students to having 8.
Wow.
And so I was doing an internship, and he ended up yelling so loud at me that another church member came and shut the door, and he just continued to yell at me until I had multiple panic attacks. But that's another thing, is I have panic attacks as well. And so that whole thing kind of happened, caused me to kind of leave. It caused me to leave that church, almost caused me to leave the church in general. Did not really trust any church officials after that. And then COVID hit, and so then it was a great time to just stew on everything. And that was my senior year, was whenever we had quarantine, so I didn't get a senior year. Luckily, I got to finish my senior volleyball season, but I didn't get, I got half of a prom, as much of a prom as you could get for 2020. I got an in-person graduation. It was in July. Fully masked, 6 feet apart.
Wow.
And we weren't even allowed to shake the superintendent's hand.
Wow.
We didn't get given diplomas. Our diplomas were already in our seats. So there was nothing. And as soon as it was done, we were urged to the parking lot.
Wow.
They didn't even let people stick around and take pictures. And then I went into college during 2020. So that was weird. Everything was online. So online classes, and I was like, this is strange too.
Right.
And so then things started to open up a little bit, and I found another church group. I figured that I'd start getting back into religion again, and found another church group and started dating this guy in the church group. And joining that church group was probably the worst decision of my life. That dude ended up sexually assaulting me for multiple months before I finally discovered what was happening. Because when you're in that situation, it's really hard to think.
Right.
Because you start to have questions of, well, we're dating, so is it okay? The answer is no. But you don't really know that during the time. And so he was repeatedly sexually assaulting me. The church group was very isolation heavy. They had me basically believing that them and God were the only ones that could love me. And so I ended up fighting with my mom a lot freshman year. And so it got to the point of where my parents basically disowned me. Because as much as I love my parents, they were very codependent on me. Very much. And we've had multiple conversations about it now. Because we're good now, we're healthy now. Both sides have been through a lot of therapy, and so my parents were very codependent on me, and I was running as far away as I could.
Right.
And so it ended up, our relationship completely broke, and my parents told me just not to come home for Thanksgiving break, just don't come home, and not to speak to them. And so that was a whole thing that happened my freshman year, and so freshman year was atrocious, and then sophomore year, things really started to turn around. I got into that church group, I got out of that church group. I worked that summer camp, and it was at that summer camp that I kind of had opened up about what had been happening with my boyfriend at the time, and somebody was like, you realize that's not normal, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what this, this has a name, and you can call it that, and nothing bad is going to happen. I was like, oh. So then there was a lot of coming to terms with that aspect of things, because I was struggling a lot to call it sexual assault, because I didn't want to be another statistic.
Right.
And so that was, coming to terms with that was a lot. But it prompted me, my junior year, whenever I headed into FP2, I made my movie Morning Room, which is about my own experience in my relationship where I was sexually assaulted. And that was really nice to get to make that movie with the community that I did. I tried my best to hire only women. Our crew had 3 men on set and my editor was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was pretty much all women, and most of those women were victims themselves.
So it's a very cathartic experience
Yes,
for you.
it was. And so it was, making that movie was like such a like redeeming experience to be able to almost claim my power and my voice back in that situation. And so since then, I feel like I've been, sophomore year, I also started in therapy heavy, twice a week. Then once we kind of got my feet back under myself, then it was once a week. And now I still see a therapist. Moved on. My old therapist moved, but I have a new one, and she's absolutely phenomenal. And so I see her every other week. And so still in heavy therapy. But since making that, everything's kind of just been falling into place. So I think junior year was really when my life kind of turned around for the better.
Right.
But it was kind of, I've been through, I always like to say, it's like there's like a insurance company, and their saying is like when you've seen some stuff, you know some stuff.
Right.
And
right.
I always get told, they're like, you're really wise. And I'm like, well,
Right.
when you've seen some stuff, you know some
Right.
stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And so yeah, it's been a ride. I mean, could have been worse.
Right.
Could always be worse. And so
Yeah.
I just try to tell myself that a lot. Can always be
Yeah.
worse.
Well, you've learned to do what I always try to tell everybody, especially in school, is you learn to take your pain and make it part of your plan.
Yeah.
Because I tell people all the time, I'm like, when Adele's up there on stage and she's singing songs about heartbreak, her heart was broken.
Yeah.
But guess what? Her heart's not broken anymore, but she's still making millions of dollars off them songs.
Exactly.
And those people that broke her heart, they're no telling where they're at.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So again, it's like you're taking all those stories and you're putting it into your art and your work and your creations and stuff. It's giving you strength. Because full disclosure, we've worked together, and you're a freaking rock star. Like seriously, you impress me so much because your work ethic. We're gonna talk about that a little bit, where you got that from. Because you talk about having anxiety and stuff, but I didn't see that, because it feels like when you're on the camera or you're working on film, you're in the zone. You're in your happy place. Well, no, you're in your happy place. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm locked in this, because you've got focus on what you want in life. You're like, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. I'm going to be on a film set. I want to make movies. So it's like, you've got, like you said, things are starting to roll in a positive way, and it's not out of luck. It's because you put the damn work in.
Thanks.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I gained respect from you whenever you had particular ideas and you voiced them. You're like, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to do it. And that's the kind of thing you've got to do. And when you're a woman, a lot of times women have a tendency not to do that, because if you do, you're constituted as being, confrontational, or you're difficult or whatever. Whereas, if you do it as a man, they're like, people have respect for you. Oh, he's standing his ground. But to me, that's even more impressive. You stood your ground. You know what you want. You've seen it. You've done it. You've got the experience. You've got something to fall back on. But also, I see it in the people that I talk to about you. It's all positive stuff, because I told you when we went into that, I vetted everybody. I talked about people. I just didn't be like, oh yeah, whatever. So let's talk a little bit about where you got that work ethic from.
Yeah. So most of it is from my dad. It's from my dad, and me being an athlete, I feel like, is a big thing. So my dad was raised by parents who grew up in the Depression, but my dad was also raised on a farm. And so my dad is a farm boy. And my dad is a farm boy that always wanted a son to go and help with the farm, and he popped out a girl, and he was like, I'll make it work. And so we would be going out to the barn when I was little, and my grandpa would be going on the big John Deere tractor, setting out the hay bales. Me and my dad would be following behind, and my dad would cut the bale, and I'd be in my own little green John Deere tractor, like the little small one,
right.
and he's putting the rope in my own little tractor, and then we're moving on to the next.
Right.
And so and I remember 4 years old peeing off a truck hitch, and he just kept toilet paper in the back of his truck because there's no bathrooms out in the farm. And so I feel like I was never raised to be a girly girl. That just was never my thing. My dad was like, I need a man to come do these things, so I'm almost going to teach you how to be a man.
Right.
And my dad always, like, for as long as I can remember, he's always said, I want to raise you to be independent. Like,
Right.
I don't want you to have to rely on anybody else. Like, one day I'm going to die, and I want you and your mom to be able to take care of yourselves. Like, I don't want you to have to rely on anybody. So, like, he is like, as soon as it's time to change my oil, he's like, hey, let's check your oil. Here's how you check your oil.
Right.
I know how to change a spark plug, I know how to change a tire, know how to change my battery.
Right.
Like, he gave me a full toolkit whenever
Right.
for Christmas. And so it's like, a lot of that comes from my dad.
Right.
And him constantly, because like I said, like, he did put a lot of pressure on me, which is where a lot of that anxiety does come from. But I feel like I've also learned to turn my anxiety into a workforce. Because I feel like when you have anxiety, it's almost like your brain is just sprinting all the time,
Right.
and it doesn't slow down. It's like a machine that you like can't turn off. And so there is a way that you can harness that to push you
Right.
and make you work in ways that most other people cannot.
Right. Right.
And so I feel like there's a little bit of that, a little bit of how my dad raised me, and then, like I said, I've been an athlete since I was little. Like,
Right.
I was an only child, so my parents have put me in sports as soon as they could, so I got social interaction and wasn't awkward. Which, jokes on them, I still am. But but they like put me in sports since I was little, and so it was a lot of like, I've always had like coaches in my ear, like, just keep pushing, just keep pushing, persevere, keep pushing, keep going. And so I feel like in my head, like, my dad and my coaches, like, and even my mom have always just kind of been like, if you want something, go get it. Like, you have to work for it. And sometimes you're not going to get it.
Right.
But, like, you take that experience on the chin, you rework your plan, and you go at it again.
Right.
And so it's like, they've always been, like, anything that I've ever wanted to go for, they've always said, you never know until you try. And so I feel like whenever I'm, like, in situations of where I'm like, okay, let's just keep moving. Okay, let's just keep pushing. Like, a lot of that hard work, there's, like, just certain sayings of, like, my dad and my mom, like, coming up in my head that are, like, really just, like, pushing me forward to, like, keep doing the next thing. And so, I don't know, I feel like I've been raised to just really have the mindset of, if you want something, go get it. Like, there's nobody else, how can I word this? Luck can only do so much. Like, I was listening to a podcast called Unspooled the other day on my drive back to Fort Smith, and one of the, like, ladies was talking, and she was like, you know, opportunities don't just come to you. Like,
Right.
you have to create your own opportunities. And so I feel like that's really what I try to keep in the back of my mind with a lot of stuff, especially
Right.
like with how rigorous the film industry is. It's like all the time you have to create your own opportunities.
Right.
Like, just keep working, and eventually, like, those opportunities will be created. And I mean,
Right.
I've witnessed that. I mean, even with Morning Room getting into Fayetteville Film Fest, like, that opened so many doors for me.
Right.
There, like, getting to screen there and getting to network there and talk there, and, like, getting to work in the equipment room and, like, learning the equipment and, like, getting to talk with, like, Matt and getting closer with the professors. Like, a lot of those opportunities have simply just been, like, my hard work. Like, Matt approached me to work in the equipment room because he was like, I see how hard you work on set.
Right.
And I was like, cool. And then, like, people at Fayetteville Film Fest were like, I would absolutely love for you to reach out to me, like, just because you were brave enough to come up here and talk to me at this event.
Right,
Because most
right,
people don't, you
right,
know?
right.
And so I feel like there's a chance always for my anxiety to hold me back.
Right.
And I try my best to, instead of letting my anxiety hold me back, use it as a tool to motivate me forward.
Right.
And a lot of my therapy has been targeted towards how can we reverse it and use it as a superpower as opposed to, like, a limitation.
Right.
So I feel like that's kind of a long answer, but I
That's
feel like
good. Yeah,
I feel like
absolutely.
there's a lot of, like,
Right,
glimpses
right,
of where I get it
right.
from. It's not just like a, oh, well, like, this happened.
Right.
It was like, I feel like I was just lucky enough that everybody that was placed in my life all kind of had the same value of hard work.
Right.
Because, I mean, my dad will work himself to the bone. And, I mean, his dad did the same thing. Like, my grandpa was known on the farm and, like, in Kyoto for, like, helping anybody who asked and working so hard just to get it just right. And, like, my dad is the same way. He'll help anybody and will work so hard to get it just right.
Right.
And so now in me, that was one of his biggest things. Now, like, you help anybody and you work hard to get it perfect.
Right.
And so it's that a lot of just like passed down of like it's a big quality in my family and also a big quality to the people that I value most in my life. A lot of my role models have always been incredibly hard workers, and it's just something that I've always admired. So,
Well, I think a lot of your generation is in a situation where there's a lot of anxiety because I think we're at a precipice in society with what is defined as gender roles. We have, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, we've had this idea of what masculinity is and what femininity is. And y'all are in the friction point to where that's changing. So that's where the anxiety comes in. You can be prom queen and you can change a carburetor. You can be the director and you can be out there tilling up. You can be anything you want to be, but it's just now getting to that point where people are. So it's like y'all are the victims of all this, change. So that's where a lot of the anxiety comes in. You know what I mean?
I was like, even historical events. I mean, like, I was born in 2002, and so I was 6 years old when, like, the 2008 recession hit. I graduated in 2020, quarantine.
Right.
Smack dab in the middle of quarantine.
Right.
And so, and it's like, we also, like, we grew up in, like, we didn't witness 9/11, but we grew up in the aftermath of 9/11. So, like, I'm in the second grade watching people jump off of the 99th floor of the Twin Towers.
Right. And also being leery of everybody.
Everybody.
Look at everybody. Everybody's out to get you, kind of thing. So that paranoia stuff is what you grow up in.
Yeah.
And like I said, you're also in a situation where you're literally in the changing of the what it means to be these roles. The women's movement's been going on for a while, progressive movement's been going on for a while, but it's actually taking hold in a way that's more substantial now, and it's falling on y'all's shoulders, and that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from. It's not sometimes moments that when they happen, it's how other people look at these moments instead of like, being able to be, you're not allowed to be comfortable in your own skin. And it's just now getting to that point and it's growing. And it's a very much of a weight on women like you who are trying to change these ideas of what it means to be a woman because you feel the weight of the world too. You know what I'm saying? Because you're just like, I'm trying to change people, and y'all are just growing and eventually are going to come into power and be able to change things in a legitimate way. But right now you're in this, it's almost like this pupa stage, you're becoming this butterfly, and it's like this thing where you're like trying to get out of the cocoon a little bit, and it's like you're catching the brunt of a crappy world. You know what I'm saying? Of a crappy world, and you're trying to change a crappy world, and you don't have any power yet, no substantial power, but you're just like, let me get at it. Let me have the reins. I can do it. You know what I mean?
No, it's something for sure. Because I mean, like, we're not there by any means.
Right.
Like, things have gotten better, yes. However, like, we are not there by any means. Because I mean, like, there are times of where it's like, especially on like, with what I do in film, like DP and direct, so camera. I'm all the time in camera or dealing with lights, and both of those are very male heavy. It's not, you don't find women in those departments normally. It's getting better, however, no.
Right.
And so there are multiple times like on film sets of where it's like I've kind of had to learn where it's like if I see a problem or if another woman on set sees a problem, we almost have to scream in order to be heard. It has to be something of where it's said multiple times, and most of the time it's not done until another man on the crew says it. Because I've kind of learned that if I see something pressing, that it's kind of easier to just go to the other male in the crew and be like, hey, I think that this light should be pointed up there because that's going to fix this shadow and do this thing, and I think the DP is going to like that lighting significantly better. And they're like, yeah, for sure. And then they go and do it, and like that male is then congratulated by the DP because the DP is like, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. And 9 times out of 10, that male normally is like, thanks, walks off. And it's like, cool. Or it's like, hey, I think we should point that light in this direction. And then normally it's, no. And then it's like 10 minutes roll around of suggesting ideas that are complete failures, setting up 15 different lighting designs. Finally, one of the males is like, what if we put it in the corner? And they're like, let's try it. They put it in the corner and it fixes everything. And it's like, Who suggested that 10 minutes ago?
Right, exactly.
I did. We could have saved 10 to 15 minutes of lighting setup if you would have just tried to stick the light in the corner. But because my genitals are different,
right,
because I have something on my chest that you don't,
right,
all of a sudden I don't know how physics works. And so it's like, it's getting better for sure. And I think that men in film are starting to get better of acknowledging the difficulties of women in film, because I feel like for a while that was another big thing, is there was just ignorance and refusal to accept what was happening. Because it was one of those things where it's like, no, you don't deal with that. And it's like, pay attention for 10 minutes.
Right.
And I think you will find that, like, not only are the people around you doing it, but in some way, shape, or form, you do it as well. It's just, it's something that you don't want to consider. It's just like, I am a person that is white. My skin tone is white. I am not a person of color. And as much as I try my damn hardest to not be ignorant and not be, like, racist or dumb on, like, issues regarding race, some part of me is forever and always going to screw up and be ignorant in that area, because I am not a person of color and I do not experience the same thing that person of color or that people of color experience. So I will forever and always be ignorant in some aspect of that life. It's the same way with men and women. Men will forever and always be ignorant to some extent on the things that women go through. And so I think that we're starting to get to a point in society where that is starting to be acknowledged, of like, okay, like, I can be ignorant, and as long as I am actively working to not be ignorant, that is okay. And I feel like that's really where we're starting to get at in the film industry, is like, now we have people that are starting to create opportunities for women. It has been acknowledged that women have been dealt cards, and now we have people that are like, okay, how can we make it better? And so it's like, I mean, I know I personally, whenever I direct or produce, I try my best to open the crew up for as many women and, like, minority groups as possible. And fill my crew as much with those positions, because, like, they don't get that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so I try to include as many people as possible. And so I feel like it's very important in the film industry to, like, make that push. And so it's like, you're right, it's getting better, but, like, there are still parts of where it's like, we're not there yet. And so it's frustrating for sure to have to feel like you have to scream sometimes. And I feel like, too, like, there have been multiple times where I've been called, like, a bitch just because I'm like, this is how we fix this, and I don't know why you won't listen to me. And it's like, people are like, you're just being overdramatic. And it's like, I'm not being overdramatic. I have suggested 10 ideas and you have shot down every single one. And if you notice, these 10 ideas are happening right now. But you wouldn't listen to me when I said it. And so it's like, there's a pattern. And just because you refuse to recognize that pattern doesn't mean it's there. And just because I'm sitting here trying to tell you that this pattern exists doesn't mean that I'm a bitch because of it. And so I feel like there's definitely a line that women in film have learned to walk, of when is it worth screaming, and when is it worth just telling the idea to somebody else and taking it on the chin. And I think the ideal world, and hopefully with this push of more women in film, will get to the point of where it's like, it doesn't matter who's suggesting the idea. If we think it'll work, we try it. You know? And so that's definitely, I appreciate that push, but we're still, I feel like, a long ways away. Because I mean, I saw a stat the other day that was like, there's only, like, out of all of the film directors, like, only 2% are women. And it's like, me being a woman who wants to be a director, who wants to direct, like, Hollywood level movies. That statistic is terrifying. Like, I have, like, 4 backup plans because I'm like, the odds of me actually getting to direct a big time motion picture are slim to none. Like, even whenever you look at the big time female directors that have gotten there, I mean, like, I feel like the biggest example is Sofia Coppola. Like, I adore her, but look at her dad. Where are we? And so it's like, how do I get to be that 2% without having the connections that I have? You know? And so it's one of those things where it's like I feel like we're making a push, but I don't know if the push is going to hit by the time it matters.
Right.
It's going to be a long, hard push and a long, hard uphill climb
Right.
for women to slowly but surely change these statistics. And I don't know what it looks like in Hollywood. I don't know if anything's changing for Hollywood. I know that things are changing student level. I mean, even in festival levels, like things are changing, and I hope on the indie level things are changing, but I have no idea what it's looking like over at Paramount Pictures or Warner Bros. Like, I have no idea. And I think that's the scariest part is like, it makes you get to the point of where you're like, how much is this push really working? That doesn't stop you from pushing, but it's kind of really dreadful when you think about it, because it's like I could push this rock so far uphill, but like where I think is the peak of this mountain is really a 2-day hike up at the top. And so it's definitely something of where it's like, this is a little scary wanting to do this. And Lord, but you can still catch me rehearsing hopeful Oscar winners speeches in my shower. So hopefully one day I'll be there. You know?
But I'm gonna just wrap this up, I guess, because but you know, we were talking about your life experiences, your psych training, your psych education, your film education, your film experience, you know, being able to make stories that kind of meld those all together, but also make stories that make a difference. But I think part of this, you know, you were talking about things you've learned, and I just want to tell you, though, I really believe that a lot of these things have put you in a space and a place and a direction where you're going to do some phenomenal, badass things.
Thanks.
But I feel like you were already born for this.
I hope so.
You know,
that's what I'm choosing.
I feel like you are a leader.
Thank
okay,
you.
And people follow you, and you do phenomenal work.
Thank
okay,
you.
And if they put me at the head of Sony tomorrow, I'd hire you tomorrow.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
but you know, and I think you're absolutely the definition of a female rock star and a woman who
Thank
rocks.
you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I have so much respect for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So,
Yeah.
all right, well, thank you so much.